What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. You know, it's always been shocking to me, and especially over the last 10 or 15 years, as it applies to the superhero genre, when huge CEOs in charge of delivering on this content and delivering entertainment to a specific fan base are so lost on exactly what the fan base wants and how to handle the IP. And we've seen it over and over again, both in the divisions at the early days over at Marvel, before Kevin Feige was elevated to the position he's in, and with the old guard at DC and Warner Brothers, and specifically over at Sony, where real recently we found out, and immediately after Kraven's release, that Sony could have used a Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, really any Spider-Man they wanted in the Spider-Verse movies. They just decided not to because they thought that maybe the fans wouldn't be able to buy in. And while that sounds as ridiculous as it actually is, unfortunately, the rumors that they were going to end their Sony Spider-Verse live-action films wasn't correct, as it was soon confirmed after that rumor circulated that not only are they not done making these films, but they might even reboot the whole thing. And where you would hope that they had learned their lesson the last outing on these films that bombed, apparently they haven't. Because the chairperson for Sony Pictures Entertainment, that's right, the CEO, Tony Vinciquerra, came out with some quotes recently on why the Spider-Verse films didn't work, and he is completely lost, if not downright wrong. We're going to break down his latest quotes and why apparently Sony has zero idea still why the Spider-Man-less Spider-Verse live-action films didn't work. But first, if you could grab the subscribe button, guys, thank you to everyone who subscribed in the last couple of months. We've been gaining subscribers and growing at a breakneck pace. My analytics indicate there are still some of you who watch the channel daily who maybe haven't hit the sub button yet, which is totally cool. I realized I was doing the exact same thing with channels that I watch daily. I would just kindly invite you to do so if you've been rocking with the channel for a while. If you like the content here, hit that sub button. It's the number one thing you can do to support content creators, and I would sincerely appreciate it. Okay, so again, these were the latest quotes from the CEO and chairperson for Sony Entertainment, Tony Vinciquerra. This is what he had to say about films like Kraven, Madam Web, and Morbius underperforming, okay, let's just say it, bombing at the box office. He said, quote, "Madam Web underperformed in theaters because the press just crucified it. It was not a bad film, and it did great on Netflix. For some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Kraven and Madam Web, and the critics just destroyed them. They also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom and made Venom a massive hit. These are not terrible films. They were just destroyed by critics and the press for some reason." Now, it's hard to know where even to start with this quote, because there's a ton of other things he could have said in context and still tried to put a positive spin on it. Like, it was a really bad decision by Sony in the first place to try to make disconnected movies from the MCU when they weren't going to include any Spider-Man at all, and it was their decision not to include Spider-Man, and that maybe they should have thought that out, or when they saw with Morbius it wasn't working, include a Spider-Man, or the fact that they decided not to bring back Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man after the very public affection that was shown after Spider-Man No Way Home, and simply used him as the counterpart Spider-Man in some of these films, which they legally could have done, and I'm sure if the money was right, Andrew Garfield would have signed up for, because let's face it, Tobey and Andrew are probably coming back for Avengers Secret Wars. He failed to say any of this and just say that these weren't terrible films, they were unfairly criticized from the press. Now, guys, let's face it, there's a reason that they don't have Academy Awards given to Marvel, because really the sort of whole Hollywood film industry has snubbed its nose and looked down at superhero cinema for a while, regardless of the numbers they do at the box office. That's why they've struggled to get Academy Awards. That's why Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. said, no, don't do a campaign for an Oscar for me for Avengers Endgame. He knew better. He knew that wasn't going down, so he said don't even do it in the first place. They had to know that the disposition from the critics, if you make a good superhero movie, isn't going to be overwhelmingly affectionate. It's just that they're going to have to go with the masses on this because numbers are what they are. Sometimes critics pan things that the fans will then embrace and say, no, the critics were wrong. It does happen. In the case of superhero films, you should never expect that the critics are going to say, this is great cinema, regardless of how good the movie is. But the numbers don't lie. People didn't go to see Kraven because of how bad Madam Web was. People didn't go see Madam Web because they lost interest after Morbius. And the people who did go to see Morbius at the box office were let down because these movies are superhero movies in a time where they should be connected to at least each other and to their antagonist, what would be the counterpoint protagonist in Spider-Man. Now you have a disconnected universe that doesn't tie to the MCU, where the major point of Marvel interest is, and doesn't tie to the superhero for which all of these characters exist as spin-offs anyway. It was such poor foresight in the beginning to try to make this work. And yes, Venom worked. I would argue that he is one of the few characters that was popular enough with the pairing on Tom Hardy, and that first film that came out really carried the rest of the franchise because people just went to keep going back to see it. But guys, the more I watched Venom 3, or at least the tried for the rewatch, the less I liked it. It just seemed like a parody of itself with too many callbacks back to the original franchise, and it wasn't a terrible movie either, but it wasn't as good as the first one. And even still, that was based on the popularity of Venom. You couldn't suspect that characters like Morbius and Kraven were going to carry that kind of weight and without a Spider-Man character. Still, they pressed on. They absolutely bombed, that instead of just admitting all of these mistakes, which is what you would hope from a company that wants to keep making these films, the CEO just doubles down and says, well, the press killed them and for no reason. No, the press killed those films because the press never really liked superhero films to begin with, and they were bad films. People didn't go see them because you earned a reputation for making bad films. It had nothing to do with being unfairly treated, and the numbers don't lie. Let's face it, guys. He's saying it did great on Netflix, but people will just watch whatever hits Netflix, including how they did with Morbius, that ended up having Sony sending it back to theaters because they thought it was having some sort of renaissance or revival moment. It was just getting memed. No one really enjoyed these films at all. A reboot is the best thing they could do. But the second best thing they could do is make that reboot in the MCU and connect it to the main Marvel continuity. They would be lucky at this point if Marvel actually would let them do that. More likely the case, they are stuck just rebooting this forever. So hopefully, even in the face of these stupid quotes that definitely show that the CEO is completely out to sea on what happened with these films, they need to put a Spider-Man in them. He doesn't need to be the main character, but he needs to be in the movies, because without a Spider-Man, there's never going to be enough interest for just the villains of these Spider-Man movies fighting against other spin-off villains for themselves. It just isn't going to work. It didn't work the first time. It's definitely not going to work the second time. But you guys let me know all your thoughts down below if you agree with me that this is absolutely clueless. And what should they do with the future of the Sony live-action Spider-Man movies? I'm all ears as always. Quickly, with the giveaway stuff, guys, the next PlayStation will be for the finale of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, then Daredevil after that. Super simple to be entered to win. Just be a sub and leave a comment. Because it's truly random, the more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. All winners will be announced at the end of videos, the same way we're doing here. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on. And as always, if you like today's video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at I'mFires. Find me on all platforms with original music under All Fires. Thank you for checking out the channel. Stick around. We'll be posting again real soon.